morning, everyone, and welcome back to Rita's Delicious Dishes. Today we're going to be making a little shrimp dish, which I love shrimp because it's really lean, clean, and a great source of protein. You actually can have, if you're having jumbo shrimp, you can have 4 to 5 shrimp per serving. And if you're having large shrimp, which is like the 25 to 31 bag, you can actually have 8 to 9 and only for 99 calories. So one of my favorite things to eat is shrimp because you get lots of food for your buck. So the more food on my plate, the happier I seem to be, as long as it's something healthy. So we're gonna start with some sauteing some onions in a really large pan. I actually have a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in here. And I have peeled the onions and chopped them just so I don't have to go through the crying stage of this show today. So they're all ready to go. So I'm gonna actually pop them right in there. I have more than 3/4 of a cup, which is what the recipe calls for, but I'm just gonna save the rest of them for another time and another recipe. So we'll get these moving. I think I didn't put quite enough little oil, so I'll add just a little bit more to the pan. And we'll let those begin to saute. Turn the light on. And while these are sauteing, I'm going to chop the tomatoes. So I have on the recipe that you can use canned tomatoes, and if you're going to use canned plum whole tomatoes is what you're going to use. I'd love to see you buy San Marzano. They're very expensive. They're like $4 a can, but they are the closest to using a fresh tomato. So I actually am going to use fresh tomatoes today. They are plum tomatoes, and I got them very soft, and they were ready to be used for cooking rather than in some kind of a salad. So the fresher the ingredients, you need to remember this always and forever, the fresher the ingredients, the better finished product. The better the flavors, everything, because it's fresh. So I'm gonna start with my trusty Cutco knife that I talked to you a lot about because it's nice and sharp. I actually sent it out to be sharpened because I've been using it for many years and it came back beautifully sharpened, and I really enjoy using a good knife. I've talked many people into buying good knives because you actually are safer. And I'm just going to cut them in chunks because I want to really taste the tomato. It'll break down in the pan somewhat, but you'll still end up with a good sized chunk if you don't cut them too small. So I actually just cut them in half and then a couple of 3 cuts through, and they're ready to go. So, and they should be very soft. If all you can find is hard tomatoes, I'd much rather see you use a canned tomato than hard tomatoes because it's just a little bit nicer if you're using a nice soft tomato, one that's ready to go and ready to be used in cooking rather than eating as they are. So these take a few minutes. We don't need them to be too soft, but we want them to be slightly soft. And some people would put this over pasta. I'm going to put it over brown rice because I always ask people to eat a grain if they're going to eat some kind of starch. So make it some kind of brown rice, whole wheat pasta. Or actually you could do it, you could put this dish over zoodle noodles like I did one of my other dishes. I think it was my chicken parmesan one over zoodles. So I try and keep the dish as healthy as possible from start to finish. So what you put this over is going to contribute a lot of calories to this dish. So you really want to think about it. You also want to try and stay away from white processed foods, which is what pasta is. Not that it's a bad thing, but we have a tendency to eat too much of it. So that's where the not so good eating pasta comes in. So I am going to do mine over brown rice today. I have spoken to you about this brown rice once before. I actually used it in the in the spinach and rice dish that I made. I buy this at Aldi's market in Plymouth. I don't know where else you can get this kind of rice, but it's really quite nice. It's called Earthly Grains, and it cooks right in its package. All you have to remember to do is to break up the rice that's inside because it's really pretty firmly packed before you put it in the microwave. And it needs to stand up all alone on its own. So you need to keep that base nice and wide so when you put it in the microwave, it will stand up. So I'm going to crack it a little bit in the corner just to give it some air so it can cook. Usually I can get this without a problem, but it seems like it's a bit of a problem today, so I'll just give it a little slice with the knife so it gets some air, otherwise it won't cook properly. Just a tiny little slice. It doesn't have to be ripped wide open, so we'll set that aside for later. It takes about 90 seconds to cook that rice in the microwave, which is really delightful because you can have it ready in no time at all. These are beginning to soften up and smell wonderful. I am going to put a little bit of salt and pepper. That's the only time I put any kind of salt and pepper in the dish is when I'm doing the onions. Oh, they smell great, just great. And they have begun to soften up, so they need a little more time. I have measured out my wine. I have my oregano all ready to go. They're all going in together. The three things that are going in next is the tomatoes, the white wine, and the oregano. We'll let that come to a slight boil. I'm going to swirl in some butter before I put the shrimp in, just to give it a nice little rich flavor. Butter, people shy away from butter, and I don't eat a lot of butter, but I know that every once in a while, a little tablespoon of butter in a gravy that you're making, or a little tablespoon of butter in an Italian dish, just gives it this richness that you just can't get with olive oil. So, and that, needless to say, we all know that olive oil and butter are quite different, and quite different for us. So, using a minimal amount of butter is never going to hurt you. Oh, these are just perfect. They're just starting to get a little golden, which is a nice color, and I can actually feel them with the little rubber spatula that they're getting soft enough, excuse me, to put the remaining ingredients. So I'll put the white wine, sizzle, nice beautiful sizzle, the tomatoes, and I'm making a larger portion today than my recipe calls for because I am going to feed my crew, which is always nice. They enjoy that. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit. So I've added the white wine and the tomatoes, and now I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of oregano. Oops, there we go. And I don't want you to add too much oregano. 1.5 teaspoons will work just fine because oregano is a very strong spice, very strong. So you definitely want to keep control of that and make sure that it doesn't take over the dish. Unlike parsley, it has a way stronger flavor and truly, truly can affect your entire meal in a negative way if you put too much. So I'm going to get that to come to a nice little boil and get those tomatoes to break down a little bit. Oh, it smells so good. Half of cooking is smelling. I'm going to get the spinach, the shrimp and the feta out of the fridge. I have cleaned the shrimp. This is raw shrimp, everybody, raw. I buy the very large, actually jumbo or super large or extra large or whatever they call them. They are 13 to 15 in a pound. So I just like bigger shrimp when I eat shrimp. Some people don't mind the little tiny ones. I mean, I'm okay with them if someone's serving it to me, but if I'm making my own shrimp dish, I prefer the jumbos. They are a little pricier, but I do catch them at the market on sale. I happened to get this bag for $8 off, which was a great savings. And you can do so many things with shrimp. I actually have shrimp and eggs. If I have things left over with shrimp, I have shrimp and eggs in the morning for breakfast because they're very good for you and a great way to start your day. So these are coming together nicely. And all I did was take they had the shell on. So once they're defrosted, the shell peels off very easily and the tail pulls right off. So sometimes I boil the shrimp shell, because if I'm going to make some kind of a fish chowder or some kind of seafood chowder, just to use that as part of my broth, because shrimp broth is really quite hard to come by unless you're boiling shrimp. So these are very good size, as you can see. Some are larger than others, but they're a really nice size shrimp. And I have quite a few of them in here, and I'm going to use them all. There's a bit of shrimp juice on the bottom. I'm not going to drain them. I'm going to put that right in there because it's going to add some flavor to the pan. Oh, smelling ever so delicious. I don't know if we can get a shot of this as it's coming together, but you can see the color of the juice is beautifully red. The onions are all nice and soft, and now the tomatoes are softening up. You actually can throw things in here. Sometimes I put some spinach right at the very end. You can throw a baby spinach in just to dress it up a little bit if you like, but today I'm going to stick right to the recipe because sometimes, and I'm sure you all know this, sometimes the less ingredients, the better. Especially in salads. I love to make salads, but any more than 4 or 5 ingredients in the salad, to me the salad kind of gets too many things going on. I'd rather taste all the individual ingredients, so sometimes if you keep it with less ingredients, the better it's going to be. So this is coming along beautifully. I'm sure the film crew they got the smell going on. You guys, I'm hoping for smell-o-vision one day. I say that all the time, but oh my goodness, wouldn't that be wonderful? And by the way, I've made this recipe for some guests, and many of them say, can we take a picture before anybody touches the platter? Which always is very flattering to me, that they want to take a picture and they want to send it to friends and relatives. I take pictures of my food as well, but that's me. But I'm finding more and more people do that. So that looks like it's just about perfect. So now I'm going to swirl in my little butter. It says just a tablespoon. I'm going to add a bit more because I have a larger amount of food cooking than my recipe calls for, because I want this to be my dinner tonight, and I also want to have my crew have a little taste. So we make it a little bigger amount so everybody can enjoy. It ends up being quite delicious, and I think you'll all find that as well. Oh yes, so I'm going to turn the heat down to medium. The butter is almost melted, all swirled in nicely. You can even smell the richness of the butter when you stand over the pan. Just delightful. Okay, the shrimp are ready to go. I'm just going to drop them in. I don't know that the pan will take all of them, but we'll see. I'm going to put the juice in. Oh yeah. We'll throw a few in at a time. You need to stay right with this pan because it is without a doubt, shrimp is one of those things that can overcook in 30 seconds. So you need to stay right with it. I'm going to turn it back up a little bit because the cold shrimp lowered the temp in the pan, but that's okay. That's what it's supposed to do. I'm just going to throw a couple more in and then I'll use the rest another time. Oh yes. So when you watch the shrimp, you should see them in a few minutes start to turn orange. When they turn bright orange on both sides, so I'm going to leave them on one side and let them cook for a minute or so, and then I'm going to flip them. So once they're orange on both sides, you can then shut the heat off. While this is cooking, I'm going to try and adjust my rice cooking so they finish together. So, excuse me, they are orange on one side. And in goes the rice. This, so I'm going to do 90 seconds. There we go. So when that's done, the shrimp should be done. Doesn't take but 3 or 4 minutes for these shrimp, you guys, so truly do not leave your pan. I've left the pan and come back and gone, oh, maybe not with this dish, but other dishes I have definitely messed up the shrimp, and oh, there's nothing worse than tough shrimp, especially when they're expensive as it is, so you don't want to be losing any of that really delicious food that you've chosen to cook with. Oh, heavenly. I guess heavenly is the word I would say, is what the smell is smelling like. Like I'm going to heaven, food heaven. I think I wake up in food heaven, or I sleep in food heaven or something. I think about food or dream about food more than I dream about anything else. Some of my best recipes are from dreaming and waking up and getting to the kitchen and putting them together. It's kind of interesting. I don't know where that all comes from, but I'm glad my creativity is in food because I truly enjoy it, as well as all of my friends do, and my other half. So we're looking just beautiful. Oh, yum. Yep. I forgot I need my cutting board for one more thing. I need to do the parsley. So I have fresh parsley. I washed it all nice and clean. I'm going to chop off the bottom where I don't want to use these stems. The shrimp is done. I'm going to remove it from the heat so it doesn't overcook. I'll give it one more little spin around. Oh, so beautiful. Just beautiful. Okay, the rice is nice and hot. Ooh, be careful with that rice because it is plenty hot. So now I'm going to chop up my parsley. It has been washed nice and clean. Be sure and wash all your greens. I don't care what it says on the package. You know, I mean, it doesn't have a package parsley, but lots of times people don't wash their parsley, and it can be very gritty and very dirty. I actually have done that and learned my lesson through the years that it needs to be washed nice and clean, and then just shake it dry. You can actually leave it in a glass like I have it over there with water, and it will stay just beautifully. You can put it in the fridge if you like, but you don't have to. So I just kind of rough chop it because I like the flavor of fresh parsley. So the bigger the chop you leave it, the more you're going to taste it. Okay, so we're ready to do our plating. I'll set this here. Here we go. Rice first. I get this all cut out, make it a little easier. Oh yes. And this rice, by the way, is very does very well calorie-wise. 1 cup is only 120 calories, which is very unusual for brown rice. I've often wondered if that's the correct number because brown rice is usually higher than that, like somewhere around 200 calories. So I'm not quite sure what it is about this rice that makes it so many fewer calories, but I just go with it because that's what they say it is. So here we go. Spread the rice around a little bit. Then we're gonna put our beautiful tomatoes and shrimp on top, and then we'll dress it with parsley and feta. Oh, just beautiful. Okay. Look at this beautiful dish. I've got to get some tomatoes in there. I'm not even ready for lunch, but it's making me hungry. Lovely. Okay, here goes the feta. This is what really gives it the flavor, you guys. I mean, the whole bottom base to this dish is wonderful, but topping it with fresh feta, especially good feta. Now, remember, I use only Dodoni's feta. You can buy it at Market Basket in Plymouth. It's the only, and you can also buy it at Big Y in a smaller package. It's a little pricier at the Big Y, but if that's the only place I could get it, or have that's as much time as I can get to Kingston because I'm in Marshfield, then I buy it there. So you do the feta lightly, and you do a liberal amount of parsley on top, and there you have it. There we have a beautiful dish of shrimp, tomatoes, and feta on top of brown rice. So I think that you all love this. It's an easy, quick meal. It probably takes about 15 minutes after you've got all your ingredients prepped, and it's a wonderful thing for everyone to enjoy. So I hope you do make it, and thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.